right. Let me get this going here. Hello. Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Jonathan Haberkorn, and I am here today to do my mentor session. We're currently February 4th, 2023, and we have 5 questions that have come in. Before I get started, though, I want to give a little bit of background about myself. There's been some new members that have joined, just in case you haven't met me yet. My name is Jonathan Haberkorn. I'm based out of Naples, Florida, and I run a company called Intrazen. We specialize in enterprise application software, business processes, systems integration, automation. However, over the years of running the company, besides just having that as my core expertise, I've also gained a lot of knowledge around marketing, sales, HR, finance, all the things that you need to run a business. A lot of that really came as a result from being an AO, and as I was jumping into my business full time and learning all the necessary things that I need to run the business, and learning a lot from the other AO mentors that are here. So that's a little bit of background about myself. So my business, we've been in business for 12 years, but I jumped into it full time in 2017, and I was so happy that I had AO. It wasn't AO back then, but I met Sean Thomas, and ever since then we have been going at it and growing the business. So over these years, since 2017 till now, I have since graduated into the AO squared, and I'm really happy to be able to give back to others as I've walked this path and just share, some of the experience that I've had along the way. Okay? All right. And just as a reminder, the goal of AO is to get to 7 figures. So thinking through the lens of that as we're going through these questions, I'll keep that in mind. And I also wanted to give a big shout out to Alex Wilkins for becoming the new MVP, AO MVP. That's a huge accomplishment. Alex, congratulations to you. I've seen the progress. You're putting in the work. You're doing all the things. Truly the most won't I will attitude. Just going all in. So big congratulations to you on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into this. The first question that has come in is from Stella. And it says, the question is, what should I do if I hired a person and the person's not being responsive? A little bit of background. I hired a person to do email marketing for me. I'm unhappy with his responsiveness, and after I've clearly stated that nothing has changed, haven't found a replacement for him yet, so what should I do? Okay, so what we're talking about here is performance, right? I guess I have a couple questions, so I'll think through the lens of these things and answer it in a couple different ways. So the first is this person a full-time or part-time employee? When I think about the performance and expectations, those are different whether they're full-time or part-time. I think naturally you have to think about capacity of the team, and what are all the things that are on their plate, and have we overloaded them? I would seek to understand why are we not getting the kind of responsiveness, and if they're part-time, do we need to tailor our own expectations? I know sometimes in my experience, as I've worked on different projects or have had people working for me, we may have a part-time expectation, have a expectation where the communication you feel should be closer to full-time, however, really they're working part-time. So you have to understand, from a capacity standpoint, Is that person, full-time, part-time, and is your expectations around that appropriate? So that's one thing I keep in mind. The other thing is whether or not, if they're not an employee, then are they a contractor or a vendor? That's important because, and I handle these differently because expectations would be a little bit different amongst them. So if you have a contractor or a vendor that you're having this problem with, then I would check out the contracts that you have in place to see, is it clearly identified, what are the milestones, what are the expectations that are there. So you have something that you can go to be able to have the conversation with them and say, look, you're not meeting the expectations here. And this is what it says, in our contracts about how we're going to operate. But to be more tactfully about it, the way that I would typically go about this is, just clearly communicate what the expectations are. Making sure that you have that conversation with them. If they're an employee and you're seeing this to be repetitive, there can be performance improvement plans. It's just a way of saying, let's agree on what the expectations are and let's track that. And I would do that in a very positive and constructive way, so you can, look to get the outcome that is good for both of you. In doing that too, I would first seek to try to understand why is this happening? Are they over capacity? Is there other things going on in their life? You have to tread carefully around some of those questions and what you ask. But being there to understand if maybe you have a process in place that's preventing them from doing things that they need to do. It could be an internal problem that you have. But if you continue to see the issue after you've had those communications, and it sounds like you've already spoken to them, just make sure that is clearly documented. Because the next series of steps might lead to a termination, and in order to do that, you need to be prepared from a compliance standpoint. I'm not sure exactly where you reside, but there are HR laws about termination. So you do need to make sure that you're aware of what those are. But basically, you want to be able to have clear documentation that this has been a repetitive trend. And then, if you need to do the termination, you can do that. In order to do that process, there's a notice that you need to give them, right? You want to have documentation amongst all of this. So depending on what the local laws are there, you want to protect your company and yourself. So you're doing this in the right way. Depending on the type of termination, you may need to have separation pay. It just depends. If it's non-performance, typically not, but just make sure you're apprised of what the local laws are and get some legal counsel specifically if you do need to terminate them. But what I've found in the past is having some empathy, approaching with a empathetic leadership style. I've found that people usually open up, and then they'll communicate about what their needs are. But in the end, you still need to run your business and still have set expectations. So, okay, well, I hope that helps. Please do reach out if you have additional questions around that, and hopefully you can get that issue resolved. Okay, the next question. We have Robin. Robin, I appreciate all your questions that come in. In fact, I went and grabbed this, and thank you again for sending this. I have this on my desk as a little reminder of the work that you're doing with all the painting. Okay, so here is the question from Robin. How could I convince someone to partner or invest in my business as an artist? Okay, I'm an artist who helps people feel moments of calm through my oil paintings of sunsets. I know to sell more, I will need an e-commerce website linked to sell prints, originals, and other products with my art on them, and my expertise is simply being the artist, not the business and tech side of business. How do you think I could convince someone to partner with me and do all that side of the business, and we split the revenues? Okay. All right. I definitely understand that. There's different ways of thinking. There's left brain and right brain. Very creative folks sometimes don't like numbers. They don't like processes. In fact, they're kind of opposite of each other, right? Where from an art perspective, we look to break down logic and reason, whereas in business, it's all logic, reason, very structured. So these are different ways of thinking. So I think that what we see commonly is depending on the skill set of the artist, the artist may hire a manager or have some other type of business support so they can have the business side of things run while the artist focuses really on what they do best, the art piece of it, right? Okay, so how would you go about attracting someone who could become that type of person, like a business manager or somebody to handle the business side and the finances and the tech and all of those pieces? Okay, so what typically needs to happen is there should be some kind of projection, right? I mean, they have to first of all really buy into the art, what your vision is. I know that you got a vision of where you want to go. You have to be able to clearly communicate that. A way of being able to do that is creating somewhat like a pitch deck or at least some kind of business plan. Those are the two assets that you would want to create. So then as you start to have conversations and it will formalize it. First of all, it will formalize that for you and make it really clear what your expectations are and what you're seeking to do exactly, larger than, or I would say more specific than, broadly just saying, hey, I need to have a business investor or a business partner. What is it that is going to be their exact set of responsibilities towards this goal? Okay. So it's going to be important that you have that clearly articulated, and putting together that vision and a business plan is going to be important. And then you can, start to have those conversations with people. I wonder if that's the right next step, though. I'd like to offer an alternative perspective here, which is that before you give up equity in your company, before you give up equity in all the art and everything that you're producing, can you take some of these steps yourself? And so, for example, when I was thinking this through, if I was in your shoes, in your perspective, I would try to reach out to these platforms where you think you might want to sell and get as much free advice as you can from them. Think about this. Companies like, let's say Etsy, or I don't know what platforms you want to be on, but they all have onboarding processes for bringing in customers into their company. They will have lots of materials and even support to help onboard you into their company and support you with being able to put your art onto these platforms. So I'm just wondering if you need a business person to do that, or if you can take the steps to do that. I always kind of refer back to this here. This is the most one I will. A mantra: successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people won't do or don't know how to do, and that's what makes them successful, right? And so sometimes that means stepping outside of the comfort zone, and while you are very focused on your art, I'm just wondering if it makes sense to give up equity in that, when I think there are some steps you could probably take to reach out to these platforms and get free help from them without needing a business partner. So just something to think about. Usually business partners they'll want to see what are the projections and what are the sales going to look like, and I'm just wondering if there's enough of that put together, or if really you're just trying to continue to generate revenue, can you get on some of these platforms yourself and get on a call and have them help you through the steps of getting onboarded and getting your artwork into those formats. And oftentimes they also have support teams that will help with that too. So in all of that, you don't have to give up equity in the business. Okay? All right, so always thinking about ways that you can continue to build your business without having to give up equity. I think that's a good approach. And if that part isn't working, then I would also, I think finding somebody who's really good at doing those steps would be helpful. Just keep in mind, they're going to want to see certain things: projections, vision, what the partnership benefits will look like, and that will need to be detailed. Okay? All right. Looks like we've got a few people. Yes. Alex has joined. Nick is here. Yolandi. Awesome. Cool. So let's go ahead and jump into the next question we have from Rohit. Are core values and value statement interrelated? What is the difference? Background. I have a set of core values for my company and about to write a value statement. Not sure if I explain why I'm using such core values for type of culture I want, or if targeted at specific audience. Okay, yes, they are interrelated. So let's just start first with the definitions, and then I can give just a little bit of examples here. Okay, so core values is basically your principal beliefs, right? What's important to the business, and that is how you operate. From a value statement, that's how you communicate about these values and what's important to employees or to the company, but the audience would be both internally and externally. Okay, so your core values represent what the company, how we need to operate, and then a value statement is an explanation of what that means. And then, of course, you can use that internally to employees. You can use that externally. It's very common to put it on websites. In your sales process, one of the things I've learned from Tom Black is to pitch your sales based on core values. How well do the two companies' core values align? And so when you have values that align with each other, then you have a good prospect and relationship that can happen. You don't have values that are going different ways. That obviously is not going to be fruitful. So this gets intertwined through all areas of the business, everything from performance and goals of your employees to how you're communicating and the tone and the brand of the company. So so these two are definitely intertwined, and you'd want to use them at the right, I would say, touch points of the brand internally and externally. Okay. All right, moving on to the next one, we have Lysandra. The next question is, how can I be more organized in and with my business, especially when managing different orders and client prospects such as weddings and large parties, as well as business documents and contacts, etc.? Okay, so the essence of the question is about organization and how to be organized with all of the things going on, right? Entrepreneurs, business owners, we have tons of things going on all the time. sometimes it could feel like it's out of control. So we do seek to find ways to be organizationally efficient, so that way we can maximize the value of our time and just operate efficiently, deliver our products and services in an efficient manner, and being able to make sure our clients feel that, our clients and the people that are buying our products. Okay, so background is I have a baking business specializing in custom cakes and dessert tables. There are a variety of orders, contacts, and documents that I need to keep and stay organized to save time and stay on top of each order to be efficient. Okay, I want to tackle this question in a couple different ways. First, I'm going to talk about behavior, and then I'm going to talk about solutions, tech solutions that can help, low-tech, cheap ways of doing this, and there are, if the money allows, there are more high-tech solutions and softwares you can help solve some of this. So, but before that, I think the core essence of this is really a behavioral type of question, because it makes me wonder from a Myers-Briggs or Briggs-Myers, Colby culture index, what is your personality type? Because there are people who are extremely organized naturally. They're just, and then there's the other end of that spectrum where it's an unnatural thing. And both have their own qualities that can be maximized on. And it makes me wonder, what is your specific personality, and are you the right person to organize all the things, or do you need somebody else that is extremely organized and loves doing those things and thinks that way? So having the right person in the right role is very helpful. This is why you commonly see project managers within organizations, where you have people that are visionary but maybe not execution. You've got people that are extremely execution, like tell me what the goal is, we're going to go get it, here's the whole plan, all the things that it takes to do that. So just think about that. I think going back to the most one I will mantra, especially as we're growing the business, we can't always afford to have just as many people as we need on the payroll. So that being said, I see the essence of the question is, how can you specifically be more organized? The question is, if you can have somebody to help with that, would that make sense? But if not, if the cash flow is not there and you're still in the growth phase, you got to wear all the hats. So tactfully, here's how I would go about this. Low-tech solutions first. Simple, free things, right? What can we do that's not going to cost us a lot of money but keep us extremely organized? Just a simple pad and paper. I know that sounds antiquated, but it is amazing that what a simple checklist can do. And if you have a repeatable set of tasks that you do, or need to happen, a simple checklist. Amazingly enough, this is one of the interesting case studies done about low-tech solutions within doctors' offices. I think within an ER, they have a checklist of things that they have to go through to make sure the surgeries are done, all of the right steps happen. And as a result of doing that, they were able to see, pretty good adherence to those processes. It's just simple checklist, check, right? Why is that so hard for people? Because it goes back to the original thing I was saying, the human behavior piece of it. Do we naturally think that way or not? So if we don't, we have to put ourselves into that space to do it. One of the things that I do personally every Sunday at 5 p.m., I have that blocked off. Basically at 5 p.m., I'm planning for the week ahead. Got a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts, different clients, meetings, documents, contracts, all of the things. And I need to be coordinated amongst myself, as well as my whole team needs to be coordinated and look up to me to help delegate and plan how all of this needs to work, right? So carving out time to dedicated to that is going to be an important step, okay? So simple pad and paper, another low-tech solution. You can use Google Sheets. You can use just something to keep a basic list of the actions that need to happen. So you can plan. Also, there are formal methodologies for this. Check into L10. It's part of Entrepreneur's Operating System. And L10 is a way that you conduct your meetings and organize your work. So, that's something that you can, adopt. And I think it's for you if you go out to the website for that. You can get the L10 rubric and follow that. So, okay, so that's a low-tech solution. High-tech solutions, there's usually some dollars involved in this, but you get a little bit more out of it, right? Depends if you need this. Depending on your team size, you may have like a Excel sheet is not going to cut it. A pad and paper is not going to cut it, right? If you've got 15, 20 people that you need to manage, you may want to look into some kind of project management type of software that you can put in tasks. It's all kinds of task management, and all of that rolls up into dashboards where you can see what's going on. That is, I would say, a more evolved version of being able to track everything. And certainly as the company grows, I'm not sure exactly where you're at in the seven-figure journey, but as you grow and as you have more team members and more clients, you will need to have a way to track all of those things more efficiently, especially if you have more employees and need to be able to check in on status of all the things that are going on. Okay, so always thinking first through what can we do free now that's not going to cost you anything. Just a simple behavior change. Carve out some time each day, or at least I do it on Sundays, put the full plan together, and then the whole week the team is executing. We're just heads down executing, and I kind of check in on the status throughout the rest of the week. Okay, that's just a simple behavior change that can happen and be able to track that. Okay, more high-tech solution, you can, all kinds of project management software out there, Asana, Monday. There's plenty of stuff within the Microsoft ecosystem, Google ecosystem. There are lots of them out there. They all basically do similar sets of things. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next question. We have from Billy. When do you know you are ready to hire others? Okay. Background is construction company, sometimes slows during the winter, but picks up for a good 7 months overall. Okay. This is a good question. There's a number of things that you want to do to carefully balance the scale and growth of the company, right? You don't want to start hiring a bunch of people and not have enough work, and then you've got this payroll to fulfill but not enough work to do. So it's a careful balance of having enough workload out there and forecasting that, right? Here you specifically had mentioned about slow times during winter. My guess here is that that's probably crunch times where you feel like, okay, payroll is probably a little bit harder, sales are probably a little bit down. I would encourage you to find ways that you can level that out. So industries are cyclical, right? You have these kind of patterns that are going up and down. You see it in retail, you see it in housing, you see it everywhere. So what can you do in those downturns to increase those sales, right? You might need to have like a complementary product you might need to have, or a complementary type of service. I think Alex Wilkins has been doing that and evolving that in his business. I remember saying, so things that you can do to push that up so you don't feel that slump, right? Because in the rest 7 months, it's all good. You got steady income coming in, you got clients that are out there, so it's cyclical, right? What can you do to kind of bump it all up so everything kind of grows? And you don't, I think the essence of this question would change a little bit if you did that. But, the specifically knowing what your projections are is really important. If you can build into your business model to have any type of reoccurring revenue, that is a really important step. That's a really important thing because it makes it easier on projections. So as a construction company, my guess here is, you get a project and then you execute the project and you got to go sell another project. And you got to do this over and over and over, right? And so if there's a way that you can also have ancillary type of product or service that can be like a monthly reoccurring or annual subscription of something, that would help with the forecasting model of how many people that you need, right? Because you can see that far enough out. The other piece is just making sure you have financial stability. One of the things that I did in my business was I built up a reserve. So in the event, if we ever did have some downturn, whether it be in the economy or, cyclical patterns like you're mentioning here, we would be able to absorb that and continue to pay our people, knowing that, it will pick up after X amount of time. So financial stability is an important aspect of thinking through, should I hire, how many people should I hire, can I afford them, what if I don't have, if there's a slump, and you can have a plan in place for that. And that, I think, makes us feel at ease as a business owner, knowing that you can weather through some of those times. The other piece is around, so the question is, how do I know when I'm ready to hire others? So you have to be looking at what the growth rate of the company is, really be thinking about the metrics. There's inputs that you need in order to know this. One is, how many clients are you seeing? This is your sales process, right? It's commonly known as top of funnel. How many people are you out there seeing, and what is your conversion rate? This is important to know that, to be able to forecast out, okay, if I increase my sales by X amount, then I need X amount of people to fulfill this. In order to have that many sales, I need to go see X amount of people. I'm going to convert them into sales, and then I have the operations team or, the team go out there and execute the work. So that's end to end, really. To answer this question, you need to be tracking the metrics through so you can know holistically that this is what point you're at in the overall process, and that you can truly, in fact, hire somebody and have enough work for them to execute. Okay. The other aspect of this as well is around talent attraction. So being able to hire somebody, that is has been increasingly more difficult in the past years to go hire people. So we need to be thinking about the talent attraction. Why will somebody want to work for us? What is it that we can do to be attractive to them? Are there benefits? If there isn't benefits, what other things, especially tying back to core values and the vision and mission of the organization? All of this needs to get tied into, the way that you go about hiring people and aligning people aligning with what your goals and ambitions and vision, mission of the organization is. And so I think that's going to be an important aspect when you think about the hiring need. One is the forecast. How do I, how many people do I need to execute this work? But then how do I go attract those people? So if I did sell this work, then I have the people to go do that work, right? So you got to think about that in multi-part process there, okay? So hopefully that's helpful, but how do you know you're ready? In my business, what I've done, the exact same thing. I know if I see X amount of clients, I'm going to convert X amount of work, and then I'm going to hire people, or I have the capacity plan of my team and arrange the work to happen at a timeline that works with the capacity of the team, or I got to go hire more people to get that done, okay? And if you want to spend some time together, I could show you how I do capacity planning. I have a spreadsheet that I put together to manage that. And if anyone wants to see that, I'm happy to share that out. So you can think through, scaling of the business. If I am at this amount of work, I need X amount of people to do that work. And then what's the capacity of the team that I have currently to do that work? Do I need to hire more people? Okay. All right. So that is all of the questions that have come in. I did want to take a moment, though, since I have a few more minutes. One of the things that I have been doing, and I thought could be useful to others here, as I'm doing mentor sessions and connecting with people within AO and other business owners, I have recently started tracking trends. Okay, so I want to share a few things that I have just picked up in this last week. I think this is important for us all to be understanding what's happening within, a micro level, like let's say maybe your industry, and then on a macro level amongst the world. Understanding that is important, so we know, the strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats of the business, and how we need to continue to adapt. Staying on top of the business and making sure that we can continue to drive it to success. So here's one, actually two stats that I thought were useful, and I want to share that out with everyone. So the World Economic Forum, they're responsible for bringing together, countries, businesses, industry leaders, and coming up with a global forecast. So I really want to talk about from a macro level. I know a lot of people probably have felt the pinch on inflation, supply chain issues, those were the biggest ones lately. And so I think it's important for us to understand where that's going. And in their latest release, it said 2023 global forecast upwards has revised the IMF has revised its 2023 global forecast upward by 0.2 percentage points. So basically 2.9%. It's still below the historical average, but I think it's important to think about what that means. So as globally, the forecast of growth in amongst all the countries is expected to go up. So, we kind of went through this slump. Obviously 2020 was a massive year for everyone. 2021's recovery, 2022, and just depending on which industry you're in, you probably felt different things. But on a macro level, it's important to understand that actually they're revising it, and I think it's encouraging to know that. Although it's still below historical averages of growth, they are tweaking the models because they're seeing positive trends here. So revised growth rate is good. Global growth is picking up. And what that means for us is the spend, and that's really the next stat that I wanted to share. The inflation has been a very difficult thing. We feel consumers are pinched in making purchases. We feel it in our businesses, and we feel it, at home. So here's the latest stat and forecast. Global inflation is forecasted to decline from 8.8% in 2022 to 6.6% in 2023, 4.3% in 2024. So it's going down, right? And so inflation spiked. Inflation is projected to go down by nearly half in 2024. So we're on this downward trajectory for inflation, and overall that can be a good thing. It goes on to say the IMF expects around 84% of countries to have a lower CPI, Consumer Price Index, inflation in 2023 compared to 2022. So 84% of countries, it's going to get easier to go make purchases. Okay, so let's translate that into layman's terms so we can understand how that might affect us. Just thinking through two different lenses, you have business to consumer and then business to business. So from a business to consumer, if you're creating products directly to consumers, as inflation goes down, that means increased sales, right? So I think it's important for us to understand that in our forecasts. If we're thinking about what our needs are in the next several years, we should, and especially if we're looking at capacity, I saw questions around capacity planning and all of this. If you're selling to consumers, consumers can have more disposable income. The discretionary income is better. They can, instead of feeling that pinch, they can buy more products. They can, potentially buy your products or services. So I think that's an important thing to understand, that over the next 2 years, it's going to get easier. I mean, obviously subject to any things that might happen into the future, but at least with the latest stats, that's what it's saying. Now, the second one, from business to business. What does that mean from a business to business perspective? If we have lower inflation, that means as we're providing services and products to other businesses, potentially whoever our customers are, they are going to have increased sales. And so therefore, you can provide more services to them, business to business, right? So let me give an example. The way that I'm processing this with my business, and we're business to business, we go in, we help companies design an enterprise application software, but ultimately those companies have products, right? So basically they are creating products for consumers. The more that they can sell, B2C, increased sales go up, right? Then B2B increases because businesses have more money to spend because they're making more sales to their customers, okay? So that's a good thing all around, from a B2B perspective, that we can be able to know in the coming 2 years, as inflation is going down, we're interacting with our businesses, their budgets are getting bigger because they're selling more to their customers. Put that into the pricing models as we're working with each one of our clients. And so in general, I wanted to make sure that I shared that out. I think it's important that we all are tracking trends, seeing what's going on. I just spoke very highly across a macro level. You also really want to dive into next level down and look at your industry specific, right? What's happening? Because there's sector rotations that are happening. Some are going up, some are going down, right? But what we're saying, what the World Economic Forum is saying, is that they're all basically going up, right? They're forecasted to grow up. However, each individual sector might have some degree of variance in there. So you want to make sure that you're tracking it from that perspective as well. Okay. All right, want to give some free value, just some things that have been on my mind in terms of trends, and hopefully that's, kind of gives you some insights into things that you can be thinking about for your business as well. Okay, so to wrap up, I do want to just remind people, keep asking questions. That is the way to getting answers. We've got tons of mentors here, and we know the people that keep engaging, keep asking the questions, are the ones that see the most results. So get in there, ask the questions. Also, a good reminder that we do have the AO portal, and there's a lot of great resources that are available in there already too. So I just want to keep a reminder of that. I'm not sure. You can get it right on the app. You can click there, get to the AO portal. So a lot of good resources, but keep asking questions, and as all the mentors are here to help support you and get you to that 7 figures and beyond. Okay? All right, well, I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about anything that I spoke about, please reach out, and I'm happy to help you. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.